All right, hello everyone. So today what I want to do is I want to demonstrate how to use materials. So this is just the owl, and you don't have to add materials to the owl. I'm just doing this as a demonstration. A good practice with materials is to put every object you want to have a different material on a different layer over here. So how would you do that? This is a nice solid object, good for 3D printing, but we're going to go ahead and explode it. Okay, so now we've got several pieces. And we're going to go ahead and move them onto different layers. So I'm going to select, first let me make sure I'm in shaded here instead of rendered. Okay, like that, and this. And then I'm going to put it on layer 1 or click on it to change the name to body. Or something more specific. And then you have to right click on it and move object to this layer, or if you have a PC, it's change object layer. And it changes color. And I can hide it. And then I can see any of the other pieces or strips or fragments that I might want to put on that same layer. Just select them out and come over here and we right click again, move object to this layer or change object layers. Okay, and then this is the part of the chest, so I will create another layer called chest. Maybe go to a front view and select all this, go to perspective, click on it, right click, and move objects to this layer or change object layers. Hide it. See if there's anything else left that we need to deal with. And if you're having a problem with the zoom orienting in a weird way, if you just hit Z, enter, and then A, enter, E, enter, it'll zoom in on everything. If you go Z for zoom, enter selected, here, select something first, like that, and then Z, enter selected, or S, now the orbit is just wrapped right around that one part of the eye, so it's really easy to work with. So now I'm going to go ahead and select these parts, create a new layer, and I'm going to have two different colors for the eyes, so I'll call this I1, or just I, and then I'll call this I2, and change object layer or move object to this layer, and we'll hide it. The process of hiding it is just to make sure that I've got everything going in the right direction here. Okay. Change or move object to this layer and hide it. And I think I'll call this pupil instead. Just makes it easier to find later. And then I've got the beak. And if I wanted to, I could have even two different colors for the beak, just make beak 1 and beak 2. But I'm just going to go ahead and select that and change object layer, and move object to this layer, and call it beak. And I can pick a different color here too. That's a nice color. Hide. Add another one, and call this one feet, and then the other one maybe toes. And I'll put the bottom of it on that same color. And hide it. You can see we've got some little pieces here. I'd like to know what they belong to, but I don't care. It doesn't look like I'm going to see them much. But I'm not going to delete them in case they close out my form, because I want to keep this all nice and watertight. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a new layer. And there's also up at the top on the PC, there's a little piece of paper looking thing you can click on to create a new layer. It's a little different on the Mac. We'll call this toes. Okay, then change colors. Let's do pink. Hide that. And I'm just going to put this on the feet layer. Why not? And then bring them all back. Okay, so now let's switch to materials. And on the you can either type the command materials to bring it up, or this little paint tube. And I believe it has a little color to it on the PC. If you type materials, it should come up too. And then what you're going to want to do is type the command download library textures. Okay. I've already done it. I don't need to do it. And then I can add all different types of materials. I can go from metal, and I can select a color. All of the textures of the metal and everything are all set up. But I can change the way it looks with a couple of adjustments. I might even just make this whole thing out of metal. Maybe the chest, I'll do some kind of polka dots or something fun. So let's change it to rendered. And if your computer is having problems with the rendered view, you can use it for quick snaps to just look at it and then go back to this shaded view. The shaded view is going to be much easier on your computer, especially if you're applying materials like metals, because metals have a lot of reflectivity, which eats up your computer CPU. So I can click and drag to put it on there, but since I've set up layers, I can actually assign to layers of objects, and whatever object you've got clicked on, it'll assign it to the rest of it. And if I set up like another object around it, like a rectangle screwed up, yeah, it doesn't look very metallic here, but let's change the color to brass. Okay. Polish it a little bit more. And then when we go to render it, it'll look more like what we expect. Okay. So that's metal, and then there's of course different types of materials like wood or plastics. Plastics can be kind of fun too. And again, if you double click the color here, you've got different colors of plastic, and they're done based off of numbers too. So if I click on that, it changes the color here, and then I can put a little plastic right on that. And then assign to layers of objects because I've already put a little bit on there. It'll now copy over to the rest. All right, so I actually want to create a custom material here. So the way I'm going to do that, just add another material, and this time custom. And this gives you kind of a blank slate you can mess with. You can do simple things like change the color and glossiness and reflectivity. If you want it to look more like glass, you can do that. Or you can add a color texture, which is a JPEG image, or even a PNG image can be applied too. And I'm going to do this one here, open it up. So that's just an image file. And if I click on it, there's more parameters to it as well. So we can see the file size is 641 kilobytes, but the amount of processing power for its application is sizing it up to 22.7 megabytes. So that's just telling you how much the materials take up, basically. So let's go ahead and apply this. I'm going to apply it actually to this chest part. Assign it to the layers to get the middle part. But I want to make it smaller. So what I'm going to do is I want to tile it. So I'm going to click on it, and it brings up this menu that we've seen before. And I'm going to choose how many times I want to repeat it. And I'm going to do maybe 10. And it's locked with this little key here. So now you can see what that did. 10, kind of give it that kind of look. Or you could even play with things like adding transparent gem-like materials. You know, I could do that on the eye. And then right click on it, assign to layers of objects. Okay. And that you can actually now see through it, but you can't really edit much of the parameters on this. You can change the type of gem from a diamond to an emerald to a ruby. I'll do ruby. So that gives me this kind of look. And then I might make the pupils kind of illuminated. So I'm going to go ahead and create another custom material. And this time I'm going to scroll to the bottom where it says self-illumination. Okay. And then I'm going to go here and change the color. What color do I want it to glow? Well, let's do bright green. And then we'll put that there and assign to the layers. So that gives it kind of an LED vibe. And then the beak. And I'm going to maybe do wood for the beak. Why not? And if you don't see it here, because we downloaded the library materials, if we go to more types, it should pop up showing all of these different types here, but then you can go start from existing, or no, start from scratch. Wait, no, that's the wrong spot. Sorry, there's another area, my bad. Plus, import from material libraries. Okay, this now brings you to the folder you just downloaded a bunch of materials onto. And you'll see that you've got textile materials, you've got organic materials like brown mulch and stuff like that, leather, grass, fur, flowers, bark, all kinds of stuff here. But I'm going to use wood And maybe I'll use a nice polished African teak. And then I'll apply that to this. And again, right click, assign to layers of objects. All right, this is looking really hodgepodge now, but the goal is actually to show you all the different materials, the tiling style. You can even rotate materials. So if you wanted this, instead of going this way, to go horizontal, that same way, you just go in here to custom, go down to your image file, click on it, brings up this window, rotation, 90. Yeah, it looks better the other way. And if I would have merged those faces together, it would have been seamless, but because the faces have a kind of a zipper strip down the middle, it's the textures are coming out funky. And that's a problem with tiling. So sometimes tile textures aren't the best for that reason. Okay, and then for the feet, another custom one, click here, and maybe I'll use penny tile. Oh, well, I got a different thing to show you actually. So instead I'm going to just make a color here, blue, just to be really awful. And then apply that right there, change the rest of the layer to that. But then I'm going to come down here and show you what's called bump maps. So you've got the color where you've been plugging in the images before, but if you come in over here, you can click on bump map. And if you have a bump map, which I can show you how to make, show you how to make it right now actually. When it's asking you to look for it, if you click on it, right click, oh, I guess it won't let you do it. Space. Yeah, so this is a bump map. I'll show you in a minute how to make one, but I'm going to apply it and show you what it does. So open this up. Okay. See what it did? It adds a bumpy kind of texture. Oh, you can definitely see it on the bottom. So that's also kind of a key thing when it comes to materials and textures, is how you make something have the feeling of, like, even feathers. Like I could find a feather texture and apply that. So that's, I can also change the color of, right? So that's just related to the texture. Then up here, the color can be whatever you want it to be, because you're layering on top of that. So okay. And the most ridiculous looking figurine is almost ready for production here. Let's do the toes. So adding another custom. And I'm going to cheat on this one and just do an easy, really bright red. Make it super glossy and reflective. And then okay, we have kind of an awful model now. So once you get to this point, what you want to do is render it out to see how it looks. So I'm going to go into a new tool panel called Render. Okay, but first I'm going to actually change this back to shaded, just to take it easy on the computer. We've already got a material set up and I don't want to mess with anything making it crash. So go to Render and go down to Render Properties here. And then you want to come in and modify. Okay, current renderer is Rhino Renderer. That's what you all got. Resolution, viewport resolution, DPI 72. I'm fine with that. Quality, we'll go up to final quality here. Background, solid color. I could put it in a studio, like a 360 environmental studio. Yeah, maybe I'll do basic environment, whatever. Ground plane, I got my ground plane turned on. Default material, you can also change the material of the ground plane. Maybe I'll make it this plastic. Apply. Okay, so I'm not going to put any of these settings on right yet. If I like the way it comes out, I'm going to leave it. If not, I'm just going to tweak it then. So next thing you do is you just type the word render. Oh, close the panel, duh. And then render. You want to make sure your view is set up properly. And it'll bring up this window. All right, so here we go. So this is what it looks like, and it's not a bad render actually. It looks better than it did for sure before. So rendering it takes a bunch of time, and it's basically trying to think about the way the light interacts. So I'm going to go ahead and save this rendering, just using the little save button there. And then I'm going to save it to my desktop, and I'll arrange this later. Call it OWL, and not a bitmap. I'm going to save it as a JPEG. There we go. But because this took so long to do, what you might also be considering is you want to do a preview rendering before this one. So this would be the final rendering. So let's go ahead. I'm going to close this. And I'm going to go back to my render settings, render properties, and look at these. These are what I used. So you want to copy basically the exact same thing. Basic environment won't be Mac, but there will be a basic environment if you have a PC. Ground plane, remember I changed the ground plane to a different material there. And all the rest of it just leave like this, and that's the final version, okay? If you want to do a quicker render, if you go back up to our render panel here, and you go render preview, that's how you can check what your materials will look like in a more basic form without having to deal with the render times associated with the larger final version file type. You can already see it's a little bit more pixelated. It's not going to be as clear, but it'll take a heck of a lot less time. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this, which you don't want to do very often. It might actually crash your computer. Hopefully mine will be okay. All right, so now I can close this window and just kind of be patient with it so it doesn't crash. You don't want to be clicking all over the place and stuff. All right, the last thing I wanted to show you is you can also adjust your bump map, by the way. I forgot to mention that. So if you go under bump here, right here actually, so where it says 100, you can change that number to lessen the bump. Just right there, sorry. Yeah, so that's the easy thing to do. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is show you how to make a bump map. So we use Photoshop for that. Photoshop has all kinds of really handy 3D tools. So I've got my regular version of my whatever tile I want to use. Let's say like not that one, sorry. Like that. Okay, so maybe I'll use this and then I'll open it with Photoshop. And you don't want your image files that you're using to be any bigger than like 1.5 megabytes at the most. 750 kilobytes is pretty good. So I've got this image. Now, to make a bump map, all you do is you go up to this little tab here that says 3D, click on it, or no, filter, I'm sorry. Go to filter, 3D, generate bump map. So Rhino uses bump maps, but things like the Unreal Engine or Blender will use normal maps. So you can use either one of these. But for our purposes right now, we're using bump map. And you can see here on the sphere how it looks. And it looks like it's bumping out the right part. If you wanted to make it higher or lower or change parts of it, you can mess with these settings. You can also invert the design. So what was out is in, what was in was out, basically. So invert design, okay. And it'll make something that looks like this. Then you file, you save it someplace, and that's what you import as a bump map to get it to work. So back to our owl. I think it looks good, and it's a good primer on materials in Rhino, and materials work like this in a lot of other programs too. There's more sophisticated ways of doing it, like with UV mapping and stuff, but I think this is a good example of getting something that you can render for your final character and have it have more visual impact. So thank you very much.